The hourly rate is so high because we are expecting you to do prep work and grading when you are not in the classroom. Well, with the amount of time, which includes prep work, grading, exam writing, student contact, and more, I put in, I earn about $5 an hour. I don't feel that I'm earning my full potential for my secondary degree or valued as an educator. I have done a lot of unpaid work for this institution, and I'm glad the union is saying we do not have to do uncompensated extra work.
Being an adjunct with only semester by semester contracts has made it uncomfortable for me and my family to invest in buying our own home because I cannot truly rely on a consistent monthly income that guarantees I will always have the money to make my monthly payments. Also, since I am paid by the hour, some months I see a significant reduction in my pay if there is a holiday during my normal day of instruction. Otherwise, there are some other drawbacks from being an adjunct compared to a full-time employee. One is that I do not have an office. I find it at times more difficult to focus on my work from home than it would be to work from an office space elsewhere. I also think an office would make it easier to talk with other professors about how their teaching experiences to possibly better my teachings. Lastly, I am aware that full-time members are often able to get free electronics to help with instruction that adjuncts are not.
I am struggling with anxiety and depression because I have no idea whether or not I will have a job in 6 months, or if I will be one of the lucky ones who gets offered a class over summer. I have gone to work sick because I'm terrified to miss work due to needing the money I'd make in that time and getting in trouble by the higher-ups. I'm terrified to even write this stuff. I love teaching. I feel that it is my calling, but I'm at the point where I feel like I need to leave. It isn't worth the mental anguish that it has been.
It has significantly impacted my ability to provide for myself financially. I love teaching and I am a dedicated instructor, but there are many instances where it has left me feeling high levels of anxiety and worthlessness. The stress of working multiple jobs impacts my well-being, and I always have a looming feeling that I need to quit teaching so that I have more financial stability, particularly the older I get. Through the district, I have very little retirement, no benefits, and I'm not paid sufficiently for the hours and dedication I offer. The percentage of adjunct faculty in our district leaves one with the feeling that obtaining a full-time contract is nearly impossible, and that alone is depressing. If I didn't love teaching as much as I do, I would have never stayed in this job position for as long as I have. I made more money waitressing, to be honest.
I love being an instructor. It gives me fulfillment that I don't get with my full-time job. I want to be a full-time instructor and be more involved. That being said, it kills me a little bit every time I apply for a full-time position and don't even get an interview. So much so that I did not apply the last time there was an open position. The lack of respect for the time and effort that I put in this institution makes it difficult to stay. Eventually, the district will lose me. Like everyone, I want to grow and develop personally and professionally, but there is no clear path for full-time instruction.
It leads to burnout because there is often much work to do and none of my prep time and grading efforts are paid. It's very frustrating and inequitable to do all the same work as full-time faculty regarding course teaching responsibilities and not be compensated for it. It's demeaning and embarrassing to have a PhD and to only earn $30,000 a year. I have a tremendous amount of responsibility, but it is not seen as worthy of pay. I don't think it's too much to ask to be paid my time, as the district knows that the lion's share of teaching happens behind the scenes. And there are many hours needed to prep before one walks into a classroom and teaches. That time and effort is labor intensive and without question should be compensated.
Being an adjunct means doing the same amount of work for less pay, less job security, and less respect. It affects my life in more ways than I can explain here, and mine is not a unique experience. Adjuncts are shamelessly exploited by our system, but we need to pay our bills, so we keep coming to work. The administrative powers that be know we're replaceable, and they let us know it too.
I'm always in a fight with unemployment because they continue to say I am guaranteed employment, which isn't true. I have pretty much given up the dream of full-time work, even though I have a solid background, great experience, and a surprisingly strong will to work. It makes me so mad that my education, my experience, and my drive is thwarted by a system designed to lift people up. Plus, don't get old. Ageism is an issue we aren't addressing here. Why can't a 72-year-old have a full-time job?
Being an adjunct has been incredibly difficult. My husband is disabled, so I'm the sole provider. I teach at 3 separate campuses over an hour apart. I also teach every summer and fill in the gap weeks with unemployment. We are much more stable now since I am working so much, but my early years as an adjunct were traumatic. With only my income from SCFT and other small teaching jobs, we struggled so much financially. We were homeless at one point, so we moved back in with my parents, and I commuted 3 hours round trip per day. We relied on government assistance like Medi-Cal and food stamps. I was so scared by those experiences that I've had trouble feeling financially secure ever since. I plan to leave teaching if or when I get the chance because the instability still scares me. Also, I am burnt out from working so much, just to barely make the amount of money that an entry-level employee could make in other fields. If it weren't for the efforts of the unions, I know I'd be worse off. The paid office hour, pay raises, and unemployment workshops have absolutely saved my family.
I feel unappreciated, underutilized, expendable, terrified of losing classes last minute, afraid for my health and family future, and I have given 13 years of my life to be treated like a slave they wouldn't care about losing in an instant. I've never gotten a job interview in spite of my education, years of experience, involvement, and top reviews by students, all of which contributes to my feelings of anxiety, feelings of being seen as worthless and valueless. I've increasingly battled depression and anxiety. I've lost my hair from stress, suffered with adrenal and thyroid issues, and have spent many nights crying. I give my life to this job. I love it and work sometimes 60 hours a week in prep, grading and teaching. But it is never acknowledged in any meaningful way, and I'm at the complete mercy of the full-timers who get priority, earn 3 times my income, and then speak to me like I'm an idiot. I have taught there longer than half of them. The disrespect, condescension, elitism, and self-righteousness is disgusting, emotionally abusive, and has eroded my sense of self-confidence and self-worth. I've been working to leave academia in the last 2 to 5 years because of this environment. Being an adjunct is demoralizing. I'm in a constant state of exhaustion and rage due to the number of uncompensated hours I work to fulfill my obligations to my students. Taking my classes from me at the last minute, after I spent countless unpaid hours preparing for them so that full-timers who already make 5 times more than me for doing the same work can make load, reinforces the point that I am unappreciated and dispensable. Despite having the highest qualifications in my field and decades of teaching experience, I get a tone-deaf email each year inviting me to be mentored by a full-time faculty member. I don't need more professional development. I need to be paid for the work that I'm already doing. If I weren't spread so thin, I'd be working harder to dismantle the academic caste system. I can't make a living as a teacher despite devoting my entire life to this profession. I'm only able to work here because my partner financially supports our family.
Okay. Yeah, let's do it. Thursday at 6 o'clock, it's the magic hour. Okay, good evening and welcome to A History of Unfairness, Professors in Poverty. I'm Rhea Williams. I am Vice President of Grievance for Fresno City College and a proud member of our State Center Federation of Teachers, Local 1533. We have amazing people on our team who are constantly fighting for fair conditions and treatment of faculty across our district. And tonight we are grateful to be able to lift the voices of our most critical faculty members, our adjunct professors. I'd like to give special thanks to Ashley Panu, who's here from the Fresno Bee. Thank you, Ashley. City Council member Nelson Esparza, and Heather Brown from the EOC. I'd also like to give special thanks to Miriam Jamali, Rigo Garcia, and Bernadette Mordigian for their tireless work for our part-time faculty advisory committee. Lastly, I'd like to give a special thanks to anybody that donated to our Adjunct Relief Fund this spring. We were able to raise a lot of money for a lot of hardworking professors, and we hope to keep that available for professors in need in the future. So we'll start off with a quick raffle. If you have your raffle tickets, get those ready. There are some very yummy envelopes that I have to give away. All right. So our first number is the last four is 8431. 8431, all right, new friend and raffle winner, come on up. I'm not gonna look at it, that way I don't know. You got it, all right. So we'll have a couple more prizes throughout the night, so keep your tickets handy. Without further ado, it is my pleasure to introduce our keynote speaker of the evening from Fresno City College's own history department, the man, the myth, and SCFT Vice President, our dear friend, Paul Gilmore.
I just did a high five like my dad does. I'm sorry, Dad. All the way from Wisconsin, and I make fun of him. I'm sorry. Thank you, Rhea. Thanks, everyone who showed. I guess the official rule is we can do this up here. It's big enough that we can do that. That's different, right? That sounds different than this? Yeah. All right. Well, I have actually a PowerPoint of a kind, but it's mainly just to give a few visuals for you. Thanks to everybody who showed up. I really, I've been up here a couple of times doing other events in recent weeks, and I have to say, and I was just talking to John about this in the back, they were going to tear this down. It's just, it's so beautiful, this place, and I get to teach here. It's just wonderful. Well, thanks to everyone, and thanks to the organizers, especially, of this event, SCFT's Adjunct Advisory Committee, for inviting me to speak. It's a real honor. I appreciate it. I'm, as Rhea said, I'm Paul Gilmore. I teach history here at City College. What I'm going to try to do is give some historical context. Is this too much? Oh, okay, all right. I'm going to try to give a little bit of historical context to the story this evening, and then we'll have people who are adjuncts talking about their experience, or people who were recently adjuncts talking about their experience. I'm not going to overwhelm you with names and dates and with all sorts of numbers, but I do have a few. Sorry. Only to give you a general idea of the trends over the decades. And I'm going to try to avoid, sometimes we do this thing where we have this glorious past, and then a story of decline. And, well, there's a little bit of that in what I'm going to talk about, but I'll try to be a little bit more complicated than that. Let me start, though, by telling you something. I don't know if you all know this, but you're looking at a lottery winner. And now, not just a raffle, a lottery winner. Not $1 million lottery, not a multi-million-dollar lottery, but it was a lot, and I mean a lot. and I really lucked out. It was years ago now, and sometimes I even forget that I won. Back in 2004, I won the lottery when I got a full-time tenure-track job teaching history here at Fresno City College. It was the lottery. You may be thinking right now, what? But Paul, I mean, come on. You earned it. You know, you went through all that school, you went to, got your master's, you went to, Georgia Tech, all this kind of stuff. You worked so hard, Paul. You may be thinking, Paul, you're a genius. You're the smartest, most intelligent person I know. And first of all, thank you. I appreciate that. You're too kind. But seriously, though, I really have won the lottery. I think FCC made the right choice. I think I'm pretty good at my job as a professor. But the key thing, and I think this comes clear when you look at this whole issue, is that dozens of others are also good at this job, and they apply for every one of these jobs. There's dozens for every job that's out there. It's a lottery in a real way. Until 2020, I was the last full-time history instructor hired at this college. 16 years. I was the last one until 2020. I did a search this afternoon. The California Community College Job Registry. I searched for history jobs. Very easy to do. I'm sure some of you have been on this thing. It's the community colleges. It's a system of 2.1 million students, over 100 colleges. I mean, this is the biggest community college system in the country. And I searched for history jobs. I do this occasionally just to see what's out there, right? See what's out there. 3 pages of jobs came up. Here they are. Take a look. They list them alphabetically, so you can expect it, right? Adjunct, professor of history. Adjunct, art history. Adjunct, pool for professor of art history. Adjunct, pool history. Adjunct, part-time, temporary, art history, art instructor, faculty. See that one, the bottom one, they almost got you. You almost think they're going to say full-time, and then adjunct, art history. Let's go to page 2. Adjunct, part-time. Page 3, part-time. Actually, if we go back to the second page, I skipped it over. There it is. There's the second page, and we've got one job in the country for history, in the state, I mean. I wouldn't be surprised if 4 or 5 of my part-time colleagues at this school are applying for that job right now. That is what I mean when I say a lottery. When I was in college in the late 1980s, people were concerned about a coming crisis in higher ed. All the 1960s profs were retiring. What are we going to do? We're going to have this incredible glut of jobs. Are we going to have enough people to replace those folks? Are we going to be able to fill those positions? Well, there was a solution. Let's not do it. Let's not fill those positions. Over the years, and this was part of a trend that was ongoing even before the 1980s, but over the years, we shifted more and more of the teaching onto the shoulders of adjuncts. So here is the basic problem. Over the last 50 years, we have created a college system in which part-time employment is the name of the game. It's the standard. But the fact is, this is not only a problem of California's community colleges, although it is a big one here. We're not alone, though. Colleges and universities, not just here, but all over the country, have spent the last 4 decades moving to part-time instructors. When I was born, 1969, almost 80% of college faculty were tenured or on the tenure track. And for some of the students in here, what tenure track means is you've been hired as a full-timer and you go through a process of, but the idea is that there's a commitment to you by the college that you're going to be hired and rehired. And then once you get tenure, you have even more protection to be able to, well, you get the sense of it, I think. You've got security. Well, that was the deal. In the mid-1970s, as you can see from this graph from the AAUP, the American Association of University Professors, they do lots of research on exactly this. Over the years, many times they've come out with new reports, and every report, it seems like a click and paste, just add in new, worse numbers. But as you see here, in the mid-1970s, over half were still at least full-time. You've got the blue line there is the full-time tenured faculty. Full-time tenured track is the green line, so right there you've got 45%, 10% full-time non-tenured track faculty, and then grad students and part-timers. But you can see where that orange line is going. 1975, 1995, 2015. And that 17% of full-time non-tenured track faculty, those folks who are there, they're hired for 1 year, 2 years at a time. They're more precarious as well. So that's what I mean when I say this is the name of the game. Let's get a little closer to home. Community colleges. Note here that the problem of adjunct labor is one that is not unique to community colleges, but certainly the story here is the worst part of it. Notice we're talking the dark colored line there, right? The dark blue line going up, up, up. R1, that means Research 1. This is the top tier universities. R2, R3, they rank these universities. The UC would be over on the left, and Fresno City College in that almost the far right column, that one right there, the associate's degrees. That's a nationwide story there, but it gives you an idea of what's going on in community colleges in general across the country. Again, this is not unusual here. So let's get a little closer to home. California community colleges, what's going on in our system? How many full-time tenured and tenure-track faculty do we have? 17,962 folks, teaching 2.1 million students. What is the statewide count of part-time and temporary faculty in that same system? 36,768, to give you an idea. I wasn't going to talk about this, but I figure I must. Yesterday I got a letter from my alma mater, Furman University, Greenville, South Carolina, a little private liberal arts school that I went to from 1987 to 1991, and they said, how are you doing as a history grad? They send us a really nice, every year they send me a nice little thing, and they got a picture of the faculty and all that stuff, and every single year I count the faculty at Furman University. Furman University teaches 3,000 students. Fresno City College, 25,000 students. Furman University has, Fresno City College has 5, and I'm not going to whine about it. We got a new one. We used to have 4. We now have 5 full-time tenure track instructors. But Furman University has 13 full-time professors of history, teaching 3,000 students. Now, it's a private school. It costs an incredible fortune to go to, but I'm just trying to give you a little sense of what could be possible. What's that? Well, how about here? How about here at State Center, our district? Total faculty, counselors, and instruction, 1,795 faculty members. 1,100 of them are part-time and temporary faculty. Nationally, the pay is, shall we say, poor. According to an American Community Survey study back in 2015, some 31% of part-time faculty are living at or near the poverty level. They often have to enroll in food stamps, Medicaid. Many qualify for the Earned Income Tax Credit. And when we say part-time, by the way, just remember, part-time, when you're teaching 3 classes a term, especially if you're a young professor prepping those classes, that's a hell of a lot more than 40 hours a week, 3 classes. Full-timers teach 5 here, and after 20 years, I suppose, I work 60 hours a week. But it's a full-time job to be doing that. And the situation here is no different, something our panelists will discuss, and so I'll leave that to the side. But let me just point out that a person here with a doctorate can teach here 14 years as a so-called part-timer. That person can teach 3 courses a term, both fall and spring, and 2 courses in the summer. In other words, 10 courses a year, what I teach, and make a little over $30,000 a year. $30,000 a year with no benefits and no guarantee of work tomorrow. So how did we move from a system in which most instructors were at least full-time and tenure or tenure track to a system in which the vast majority are in these kinds of precarious situations, the vast majority? I was on a little discussion one time with our illustrious president, Keith Ford, back there. One time we were in this discussion, and I said he said something about the vast majority of people are part-timers, and somebody said, well, okay, but they don't teach the vast majority of the classes. And he said, I forget exactly his words, but he says, well, we count belly buttons here. We count belly buttons. We count mouths to feed. You teach 2 classes, and you're jumping around from college to college to college. We count belly buttons. I kind of liked that idea. So how did this happen? Here's where I have to be careful. Anyone who has been in the world of academia at all in California, I mean, once I came here, I was immersed in the story. What is the story? The story is the California Master Plan. The wonderful glory days, the golden age of California, where we showed real serious commitment to our higher education institutions, the master plan, and the egghead there, the Adlai Stevenson lookalike, is Clark Kerr, the head of the UC. This was the story. California was the model not just for the United States, supposedly, but also the world. This was the dream of the post-war boom. California would build and keep the best university and college system on earth, public college system. There were 3 tiers. The idea was the UC Berkeley would be sort of the jewel in the crown. Sorry, UCLA. The UC Berkeley would be the jewel in the crown, and then the other UCs would also be right up there with them. And then the next level was the CSUs, and then there was this other level, our world where we take working class people and we say, all right, let's look at this community and give working class kids who had been sort of passed over by everything else and sort of slingshot them into these other positions. Let's deal with vocational and career technical, that kind of idea. Let's get some folks some real skills so they can go out and it's a wonderful, beautiful, terrific idea. I almost cry even just thinking about it. And the whole thing about this was it was free. The idea was this needs to be free. No tuition. We pay for this. This is what a civilized society does. Right? So you can see what I mean when I said, oh, there's the golden age, right? But it was a bit gilded, something I may return to when I try to wrap this up. The transformation began really, I think, in the 1970s with larger changes in the economic and political life of the country. The post-war economic boom ended in the early 1970s, and with it came a kind of shift in our politics, a shift in our priorities. I teach, the U.S. History Survey, and we talk about the golden age of American capitalism, 1945 to 1972, where working people saw their wages double, adjusted for inflation even. They saw their wages double, and there was this kind of notion that working class people could be middle class people, and let's build these institutions like this one, so that we can create that new world. Well, that economic boom did end in the 1970s, although I have to say, when I say the economic boom ended, we're much richer now than we ever were. When we had the big collapse in 2008, we went down a little bit, and then we started growing again. Our economy is much bigger than it was in the 1970s when things were so terrible, right? It's much bigger than it was in the 1960s. So you have to take that with a grain of salt. The boom, yeah, the boom ended, but our politics shifted too. Calls for smaller government, lower taxes, lower government spending. In a world of plenty, people were much more willing to spend a little bit on this kind of stuff. In a world of plenty in the 1960s, where your wage packet keeps on going up every year, a lot of people, you never you never say, well, I want to pay my taxes, I want to pay more and more and more. But the idea that you're going to support these kinds of institutions and really support great institutions like that, it's an easier sell in good times. Somebody's getting paid more every year. Okay, I'll dish out a little for these community institutions. In the 1970s, the politics of the country, the politics of the state shifted a bit in the context of that end of the boom. When the squeeze is on, people are a little bit less likely to say, yeah, I think I'm going to support that institution the way I used to. I won't go into the whole history of Prop 13 and all of that stuff and the politics of the tax revolt and all of that. I don't want to do that. But connected to all of this, it wasn't just a kind of tightening of the belt. Connected to all of this was a call to shift what government does and the way it does it. A call to privatize services that had been in the public realm, to kind of, I would argue, hollow out the public sphere. It's an efficiency measure, I guess, right? The idea was that we'll let private folks handle it, we'll have fee-for-services for things, but it was also an ideological project as well, delivering public goods produced by the community into the private sector. And in that context, colleges and universities, which had seen massive growth in the post-war period. Colleges and universities were things that a tiny elite went to in the 19-teens and 20s and 30s. And by the 1960s and 70s, we're getting half the population getting some college. Well, even in California, people began to tighten their belts, right? A state which, remember, under the California's master plan, prided itself on providing this free college and university education to in-state residents. It began to shift too. It began to shift the burden into two directions. One, onto students. We'll have the students pay. We'll have the students pay fees. We'll have the students pay something like tuition, although they try to avoid that word. We're tuition free, but we pay thousands and thousands and thousands and thousands in these things called fees. I don't know, in your wallet, it's the same money. Anyway. We know that story too. In the last 20, 25 years, we've seen an incredible increase in the amount that's borne by, the cost of the university that's borne by the students themselves. Finally, starting in the 1980s, even California's community college system, which was supposed to be free, even there, students had to start paying tuition. $5 a unit, by the way, started out. When I started here in 2014, it was $18 a unit. For the students in the crowd, you might want to work on pushing that one back, I don't know. The other way to shift the cost burden, right, to pay for the institution, was to put it on the backs of adjuncts. People always talk about, well, we've got this really cheap system, a system here, a community college system that's cheaper than almost any other state in the country, even with the amount of fees that our students pay, and we say, well, that's really cheap. Well, part of the reason why it's so cheap in that sense is because other people are paying the costs. The costs are put on to the backs of adjuncts who sometimes live out of their cars, sometimes can't pay the rent. That lack of rent is a cost of the college system that we have. It's a cost. That's American higher education began this massive replacement of full-time tenure-track jobs with those part-time positions. This mirrored the trend. People always talk about trends. Well, it's inevitable. They'll say this mirrored the trend in outsourcing and in many sectors of the economy. Right? So there's this kind of downsizing world, a hollowing out of American industry. You're probably familiar with that story. The the shift in the American economy, the global changes that happen. And so surely this story is part of that larger story, and therefore we have no say over it, right? It's this inevitable thing. In my history classes, I cringe when people say it's inevitable, or when people say, well, time will tell, right? Oh, time will tell. Time makes all the difference. No, nothing really is inevitable. These things are all choices, and time doesn't tell. People do. People tell. And people made these kinds of decisions, something I'll come back to. Right? It's not something that we can see as natural or inevitable. It was a choice. In these decades, American higher education began to look to other models of how to run the system. And I'm not saying that the leadership of American education had some sort of conspiratorial mind and we're just going to shift it over, but you get to see this kind of cultural shift that I think is kind of interesting. American universities began to take their cues not from their own ancient traditions. I mean, my God, it's the 1300s. What could they tell us? Or the 1800s, what could they tell us? But from the world of modern corporate America in the 70s and 80s and 90s. They began to behave like, and sometimes partner with, major corporations. And they began adopting some of the same strategies and priorities of those corporations, cutting labor costs, turning what they do. This, for me at least, is the big one. People turning what they do here in the universities and colleges, what we do, education, research, into commodities for sale on the market. I would say that we can run colleges this way, but they aren't really colleges in the way I like to think of a college. I mean, we have a role in doing that, I admit, but I think they're becoming less and less the kind of college that I like. I love the college that I'm in, but I even see it sometimes happening here. They're becoming mills, factories of learning, in which the Board of Regents are the board of directors, and the administration is the management, and the faculty are a bunch of employees, and the students are the raw material. See, Michael knows the quote that I'm doing there, and maybe some of you older folks, this is actually a line from this guy from way back in 1965 during the free speech movement in Berkeley, and he basically says this on the steps of Sproul Hall. And the amazing thing about this video, you should Google it. Google Mario Savio, free speech, and all this kind of stuff, and you'll get this quote. The thing that gets me is how shocked he is about this. He's so shocked. This notion, he was told by folks that imagine that the Board of Regents is a board of directors and the administration is management. And he's just flabbergasted that a university would have an administration that was equivalent to management and a faculty that was equivalent to employees. And that makes the students the raw material, right? A product to be sold to government, to industry, and yes, the factory of colleges. But this isn't the only story of choice. There was a choice in another way, I think. One of the choices we made, and this is where you get back to this idea of looking at the golden age, so-called golden age. I feel like I've maybe rambled. No, I'm still doing all right. So this is one of the choices we made. Another way that we made this choice. We look back at that golden age and we say, wow, we had these great institutions and a community that was really willing, politically to maintain them. But in the early 2000s, I used to assign this book in my California history class, and my students, I think, hated it. I mean, it's one thing after another. That's why historians write, one damn thing after another. In the early 2000s, though, Peter Schrag wrote this book, Paradise Lost, California's Experience, America's Future. In it, he takes stock of the previous 40 years, and a central part of that story was the story of universities and colleges in California, the story of the master plan, the story of K-12, the story of this incredible education system, the envy of the earth in California. And he talks about, okay, well, what happened? And he gives a little bit of the stuff that I just told you. He gives some attention to those economic struggles of the 1970s, the end of the golden age of American capitalism. He discusses the loss of political will to maintain those institutions like they used to because of this kind of tightening of the belt kind of thing, the kind of economic argument. But then he talked about another reason for that lack of political will, and I think this is one that, frankly, is front and center now for us, and I think it's pretty important to talk about it. And it's been going around the country for the last several years. That is, he looked at an electorate in California in the early 2000s and said, well, look at who is electing. Look at who is electing the people who run this system, and just demographically, right? And he saw an electorate that was much older and much whiter, frankly, than the rest of the population. And he suggests in this book, it's kind of a disheartening suggestion, that this state lost that political will partly because that older and whiter population could not see itself in the rest of the population of the state. That younger population that was becoming more and more people of color. He basically makes the point that in the 1960s, when the students were mainly white, those who were voting to maintain that system were okay with doing that. It was their grandkids or their kids or people that they could see perhaps as their grandkids and kids. I don't know if he quite overstates the argument, but I don't think he does. I think this is a huge element of our story, a large element of our story. A lot of us as a community here in California, I would argue, refuse to do that when the beneficiaries are perceived as mainly as people of color, immigrants, undocumented, people who aren't deserving of entry into this community, or at least that's sort of the notion that's offered. Well, some people do say that out loud, right? But not many people say that out loud, but I do believe that that's a thread here. It's a sobering thought, but it also presents opportunity, I would say. After all, that group that I just mentioned, that multiracial, back in the 80s, Rainbow Coalition, that we would call it, right? That group is the majority. And the question is do we create that political will again with that new multiracial majority to support those institutions again, to sort of look at that golden age and say, well, we could return to it in a different way. It'll look differently, right? So these are choices we can make. Here's a choice we make, a couple of takeaways here. I think I am getting close to my time now. A couple of takeaways. I was told 30 minutes or so. A couple of takeaways. One, here's one. This isn't my language, but I ran across it. I thought it was great, so I figured I'd just say it. If community colleges are to respond creatively to the challenges of the coming decades, they must have a strong and stable core of full-time faculty with long-term commitments to their colleges. We're going to talk about on the panel this, what is going on in a day-to-day way with our colleagues here, and the conditions and wages and well, whatever they come up with, it will be, I'm sure, a very interesting and enlightening thing. But one of the things I would say we need to do is reinforce this idea that maybe we should have, not Furman, 13 people for every 3,000 students. That would be, let's see, 30,000, 10, 13. We should have 130 full-time history professors at City. No, okay, all right, I'm not going to go for that one. Yeah, we need another building, all that kind of stuff. But look at that. If community colleges are to respond creatively to the challenges of the coming decades, they must have a strong and stable core of full-time faculty with long-term commitments to their colleges. There's proper concern about the effect, isn't that kind of a nice, soft way of putting, of an over-reliance upon part-time faculty, particularly in the core transfer curricula. Under current conditions, part-time faculty, no matter how talented as teachers, Rarely participate, I would say. Of course they don't participate. They don't get paid to participate in college programs designed departmental curricula or advise or counsel students. That's all gratis. Of course, we wouldn't want people to work for free, even if they were invited to do so by their colleagues. It may be impossible. Right? I was just talking to somebody who was teaching 10 courses this term. I mean, my goodness, in different colleges. Even if they were invited to do so by their colleagues, it may be impossible if they are simultaneously teaching at other colleges in order to make a decent living. It's a good statement, though. The idea is this should be our idea. Our idea should be we should move back towards a full-time labor force, a teaching force, right? Yeah. Here's another line that I ran across. Decisions regarding the appropriateness of part-time faculty should be made on the basis of academic and program needs, however, and not for financial savings. This shouldn't be a budget issue. It should be out of the budget world. And you might be thinking, Paul, that's pie in the sky dreaming. Money isn't made out of trees, but actually, you know, it is. But anyway, but I understand there's all these fiscal problems. Wouldn't it be nice if the legislature would actually make this commitment and say something like this? Wouldn't it be nice if they said that and if they said that, right? That would be wonderful. And I think we can build that kind of commitment. How do I know that maybe we could build that kind of commitment? Because the problem with these takeaways, these two takeaways I just gave you, is that they are exact quotes from AB 1725, the law creating our modern community college system. And it was signed into law nearly 40 years ago. I mean, it is the commitment of this state by law, officially the commitment. Now, are they going to pony up? That's the question, right? But they've already said it. And we talk, those of us in the faculty members in here, well, the administrators too, but to the students in here, you know, we talk about AB 1725. It's like the master plan, master plan junior, right? You know, this kind of idea. And all the rights and obligations we have under AB 1725. Well, this is there. This stuff right there. Decisions regarding the appropriateness of part-time faculty should be made on the basis of academic and program needs, however, and not financial savings. You got 24,000 students to teach. How are you going to teach them? I think that leads me to the final takeaway. The legislature has spoken already. We're not kidding. This is a history of unfairness. And, you know, it's not like a little kid, you know, throwing a temper tantrum saying, oh, it's unfair. This is really a serious, serious problem. This community, and by community I mean this state of California, we need to, as part of that community, work to build that political will back again, to make real what was already promised, what's already there. Right? It's a choice. We chose to do this. And a choice that we as a community can undo. There's a kind of sense these days of impossibility. You know, the idea that nothing's possible anymore. You're a purist or something like that if you demand something kind of big. But I don't think that this is terribly big, right? We did this before when times were worse. We did this before when we were a poorer state. We could do it again if we chose to. But when I say we, I'm in my civil rights class this week, and we were listening to Bernice Johnson Reagan, Sweet Honey in the Rock, if you're familiar with her. And she said this about singing songs in the civil rights movement. She said, you know, people say we all the time and when they're singing these songs. But in my community, she said, the I statement is the we statement. Because if you say, we will do this, we will do this, what you're saying is that person over there is going to do it, and I'm going to go take a break here and get a beer. But if you say, I, like this little, she was talking about this little light of mine, I'm going to let it shine. You're saying, I'm going to do this. And the I statement is the we statement. So it's a choice that I, as a community, can undo. And I'm hoping that maybe some folks in here will work on doing that with us, with we. Right? The English teachers are going nuts. Well, thank you very much for inviting me to give the talk. It was really nice of you to put me up here. I appreciate that faith that you put in me, and I hope I've lived up to it. And I'm really looking forward to hearing from our panel adjuncts who can tell you all about this in much more detail. And listen to that. Perfect timing. Right there.
All right, I am back. Thanks again to Paul Gilmore. And I can certainly relate to the lottery analogy. I was hired in 2015 as a full-time faculty member, and I interviewed with a huge amount of people that I went through the master's program at Fresno State with. So I knew so many people. We're all trying to get this job, let alone competing with people from across the state, people from out of the state. You feel really lucky to get a full-time position anywhere. And I think it's really a sense of luck that you don't have to work on multiple campuses, that you don't have to worry as much about your bills. I've had colleagues, like Paul said, that have not gotten a class and couldn't pay rent or couldn't pay for childcare. It's a lottery to have solid benefits. I had plenty of years as a part-timer that I did not have health benefits at all. And retirement, and to basically just feel valued for what you do in the classroom because you care so much and you want a district and a campus that cares that much about you as well. So I know when I got my first contract, I was blindingly giddy once I saw some dollar signs, so much so that I did not read my contract all the way through. So I am very grateful to have a union that supports me and has given me an opportunity to work and support my fellow faculty members. So let's get our tickets out for another awesome raffle. And our winning ticket, last four is 8419. Come on down. All right. We got some good stuff, I'm honest. It hurts. Okay. So now to present our panelists, amazing teachers and dear friends, Dr. Michael Eisinger, PhD Anthropology, Rigo Garcia, MA in Mexican American Studies and a wizard of visual and media arts. Rigo, the work you do. And Dr. Bernadette Mordigian with her doctorate in clinical psychology. So let's welcome our panelists and hear from them. Now's the time.
Are we on? Are we? Okay. They said they could. Actually, my PhD is not in anthropology. My PhD is in world cultures, which means absolutely nothing. Oh, good.
Test.
Now can you hear me? All right. My PhD is not in anthro. It's in world cultures, which is a bastardized version of absolutely nothing, which has actually hampered me here at a community college because I teach anthropology and have taught anthropology at both the CSU and the UC for years, but I can't teach it here because of the way the community colleges are set up. And one thing that's different between the community colleges and other colleges and universities in the system is that we aren't under a separate board of regents. We're under the superintendent of schools. So a lot of our setup is the same as for kindergarten. So there's some weird stuff that we deal with from time to time, including taking roll and a bunch of other stuff. It's very different than the four-year schools. But I happen to absolutely love the community college district, or college system, as a product of it. I've attended like 9 different community colleges and taught it, I think, even more than that. I came to this job in a non-traditional way. Making a decision in the middle of the night going, who do I want to be when I grow up, when I was 48 years old. And I actually came here to Fresno City to start that dream. I had one associate degree from a little private school here in town that's no longer here. It was called 4 C's many, many years ago. Some of you may remember it. But that was all I had. And I came here and started over. And that was 2004. In fact, I was in Paul Gilmore's, one of his very first history classes. I was one of his very first students. And now I'm one of his colleagues. My goal when I went back to school, because I had a long radio career, and then I hit burnout, and then I went into computers for 20 years, and I hit burnout there, and it's like, what do I want to be when I grow up? And the last thing I wanted to do was be an academic, because I came from an academic family, and who wants to do what your mom and dad did? I sure didn't, or my grandparents, or my great-grandparents, all of which were academics or teachers. And so I thought, well, you know, I'm getting old. I was 48 years old. My stepfather had always, even though he was a very successful CPA, he always wanted to give back to his profession. So he was always worked as an adjunct. When we lived in Hanford, he taught at COS, sometimes he taught at the Brandman campuses, or they were Chapman then. When we were in San Luis Obispo, he taught at Cal Poly. When he was here in Fresno before that, he taught at Fresno State. I think he even taught here at one time. And so I knew there was this, well, you could work as a part-timer. Now, I didn't know anything about the industry when I started from that standpoint, from the business side of it. But I thought, well, if nothing else, maybe by the time I retire, I could pick up a couple of classes at City and I won't starve to death. That was my goal. And so I came here. I was here a year, finished up a second associate degree, went over to State, did 2 years, completed 2 bachelor's degrees because I had a bunch of units from UCLA, Cuesta, and Porterville, and a whole bunch of other places. And in 2008, before I finished my master's, West Hills needed somebody to teach African American studies. And my thesis was on rural African American communities here in the San Joaquin Valley, and they couldn't find anybody else that knew anything about African American studies in a pinch that would work for what they paid. I think I got $1,700 a semester for those classes. But I got my foot in the door before I even finished my master's degree, which is in history. The next semester after I got my master's degree, I started working here. But this was my 3rd job, because by the time I got hired here with the completion of my master's, I was already teaching at West Hills, the Chapman campus in Hanford, and I started here. I was also TAing at Fresno State. Well, then when I went from there, I started having to find jobs, because there weren't, you saw that listing that Paul brought up of the California Community College Registry Board. I used to check that every week. I had an automatic search. I did an automatic search for anthro, automatic search for history. And that's how it looks every week. 1 or 2 part-time or full-time jobs, and the rest of the time, ongoing ads for just send us your stuff. Maybe if a job comes up, we can give you a class here and there. In order to feed my family for years, I taught between 7 and 10 jobs. I was technically full-time, part-time at Fresno State. I was teaching here. I was technically, at the same time, I was full-time, part-time at Fresno State. I was full-time, part-time at the UC up in Merced. And I was teaching a full load here, and doing my radio show. So in order to make ends meet, sometimes you really have to piece jobs together. And you cannot do your students a decent job. You cannot do, you can barely get by. Canvas is, the online systems that we use is one of the reasons why the adjuncts are probably more proficient at Canvas or Blackboard or whatever the system happens to be than the full-timers, is that so many of us are juggling so many classes that we need a repository to stick much of what we do so that when we get to the classroom, we can just be a performing monkey, do our little song and dance, and then the work is actually done online. And so it's not good for the students. It's not good for the faculty. Even when I was teaching 10 classes, I was making a decent living. But it wasn't until I was teaching a full load at City and a full load at State that I finally got insurance. Because State gives insurance to their part-timers if you teach more than 2 classes. And that's another problem with the adjunct world, is if I teach 3 classes at a UC, which is a full load at a UC, I can, as an adjunct, make $55,000 or $65,000. If I've got a choice between working here for 25 or 30, and I can go to the UC and teach upper division theory classes and make twice as much money, I'm not going to stay. The same is true with Fresno State. We lose a lot of adjuncts, some of the better, the better people, to Fresno State because, especially those with PhDs, because they can make quite a bit more and they get benefits. I want to say one more thing about PhDs. Bernadette and I both have PhDs. I think you still kind of screwed it. Yeah. All you need for this job.
I have a PsyD. It's a little bit different than a PhD. It's more, PhDs are a little bit more prestigious, but a PsyD is special for people that actually have been trained to do therapy, and that's what my degree is. But
We can still talk about it.
Please,
Yeah.
I earned it.
Yeah, we are. I actually got in an argument with my ophthalmologist. She wouldn't call me doctor because I wasn't a medical doctor. I changed doctors. When I was doing my master's degree in 2007, 2008, 2009, was when I realized I needed a PhD. This was at the crash, right? 2008, 2009 financial crash that we call a recession, but technically should have been a depression. There were jobs. Even, I don't know what they were all here, but I knew of jobs that my colleagues in grad school were applying to, where there were 300 and 400 applicants for every job. Well, if you're going for a job that requires a master's degree, but there are 200 people with PhDs and experience, you don't have a chance. There's just no way, right? And so many of us, I don't know if you felt the same thing when you were doing yours, but I felt I had to get, if I was going to do this, I had to do another 7 years of college just to be able to make sure that I could do the job that I was going for. I don't want to, I could rant, there's all kinds of stuff, and I'm sure the stories the other panelists will tell you make a lot more sense than mine do, but there was a time, so a few years ago there was a movie about what we do called Freeway Flyers, and I think that's a great name for it. At one point I was teaching here, Fresno State, UC Merced, Merced College, and teaching a class at NAS Lemoore. I had 2 hours between my last class, so my classes here were Monday, Wednesday, Friday. In Merced, they were Tuesday, Thursday, and my class at the Naval Base was a Tuesday or a Thursday. I had 2 hours to get from Merced to the base, through the gate, and to the classroom, which was stressful, especially the time the egg truck overturned on 99. And I had to find county roads to get to the naval base so that I could get there to teach my job that I was making about $1,200 for the 6, 7, or 8 weeks or what it was. But I had to go and I had to produce for my students. I had to do my job. And the stress that this puts on people, I'm not the only one. I have friends down in Southern California who anybody that knows Southern California knows that you don't want to be commuting. But they'll be in Irvine in the morning, and they'll be in Long Beach in the afternoon, and they'll run up to Valencia or something for the evening class because they have to in order to make a living. And so it is a nomadic life. You do not feel like you're part of the department. Full disclosure, I'm currently a temporary full-time employee. Last semester I was an adjunct. Next semester I may be, or next year I may be an adjunct, or I may be full-time. I don't know. But the the ability to feel as if you're even part of the institution for most adjuncts isn't there. If we're lucky, we see each other in the workroom when you check your mailbox. But we don't have conversations about pedagogy. We don't have discussions about, the one big discussion that the history faculty has the last week of school is how far did you get, right? That's really about the only work or work-related stuff that we're able to exchange. And so the adjuncts are really out there. They truly are adjunct. They are separate. They are separated. They feel disjointed. They are not part of the institution, and yet they're the majority of the classes that are taught by people who don't feel that they even belong to the institution, and next semester may not. So I hope that it gives you some idea of just the scattering. I've been doing this since 2008, and I'm on one campus right now, and I'm not sure how to behave. I really don't know what the adjustment of not having to teach class and then run to another town to teach the same class or another class is actually, I can't get my brain around it. So maybe these guys can make more sense than I do, but I hope some of that clarifies where we're coming from. So thanks for putting up with
Hello, everybody. So,
You're on.
I'm on. Good. My name is Rigoberto Garcia. Most people call me Rigo around here. But I had a small statement to read, and hopefully I'll try to keep it short. So, I'm an adjunct here at Fresno City College. I teach in the program's called Chicano Latino Studies. It's a branch of ethnic studies. And I've been here for about 5 years now. I actually started my educational journey here at FCC, and like many people, I really admire this place. And it was an ethnic studies course that first inspired me to weave scholarly and intellectual inquiry. And I'm saying this because I wrote it out. So, but to weave that with engagement in the betterment of my community. So, a lot of my work, even when I was a student here, had to do with just participating with different organizations, trying to organize different events. And also here I was able to form some clubs to do things that ultimately just to try to better this place. As an example, one big fight we had was to try to get compostable silverware at the cafeteria, and that was successful. I don't think they do it anymore. It might be, yeah, they might have stopped doing that. But it was things like that, including other types of events. So that's always been my orientation. And okay, this is all right. So when I left, I had a really amazing time here. I left to study in the Bay Area, and I wanted to stay out there, but I also have my family here, so I decided to come back. And in 2015, I was able to get a job here as an adjunct right here at Fresno City, where I work now. And when I came back, in many ways, I continued the same work that I was already doing here. So even now, I volunteer with the Puente program, which is an important program here on campus that tries to help what some people call at promise youth. I'm working with this group that hasn't met again, but it's the Community Change Studies group, which is trying to institutionalize something like a program for social justice-minded students. I also work for the union. It's a lot of fun. They don't pay very much, but it is a lot of fun. And I do work to support the Culture and Women's Studies department, which I'm a part of. So that includes helping them with some of their courses or course outline of records, or thinking through what courses they want to develop here in this place. With the students, I'm also very active. So I was an advisor and sub-advisor to the Mecha Club for a really long time, and we organized a lot of events. And in that one, we actually brought around like 300 high school students
from the Valley, from local high schools here onto campus, just to expose them to this place and this culture, and ideally have them think about coming to this place in order to further their education. So that has been a lot of my work and my orientation. With this job, however, something that I didn't know also happened. And more specifically, it was that I wasn't gonna get any health care. I have no benefits, no job security, so I have lost classes a week before they're supposed to start that I'm supposed to teach them, right? Something that was also shared earlier. It's pretty much poverty pay, right? And again, I think you've heard what that situation's like too. So I make so little at the college that I qualify for state social services. I literally have been on food stamps while working as an adjunct, which is very interesting sometimes to share that with your students and see how shocked they are, and with others. Not only that, I've had to, so I don't work any other part-time jobs or full-time jobs, but I do a lot of odd jobs. So I know a lot of people that are handymen or handy people, and just do different things. So I've mixed cement. I know how to patch roofs in some ways. I've dug trenches to put in sprinklers. I've taken trips to the dump. I know where all the dumps are around Fresno. So in that way, I'm really grateful, right, that this job has pushed me to do some of that work. But it's not, ultimately, it's not the best position to be in. So I don't want my story to be about the good subject that needs help. Yes, we do need help, right? And I'm not denying that we need everybody's help to better the situation that we're in, that adjuncts are in. But I believe that what is more important and urgent is that we think through, and in a way, I mean, since we're here now, to study this situation that we're in, and ultimately work together to try to restructure the State Center Community College District, but more so the manner in which we learn these days, or we learn in higher education. Again, because we rely on adjuncts that are very stressed out for, so back to this. In many ways, the community college has steadily been metamorphosing into a predatory business, a Walmart possibly. Although, even by its own metrics, they are failing students. And we love the students, so nothing against them. It is common for the chancellors to call themselves the CEOs of the districts here, and for the board members to agree with them. So for comparison and how this has been transformed into a business, right? At the low end, an adjunct will make about $15,000 a year working the max that they can. Again, without benefits and without job security. A chancellor or chancellors make about $300,000 a year at this place. So these disparities are commonplace in the business world, right? And I think we all understand that. But they should not be commonplace in a place where that's intended for learning, right? So for the district, adjuncts are cheap, disposable labor. Their knowledge is commodified for the students that they have effectively made into customers or consumers, just objects that equate to money in many ways. And this is no way to learn, and desperately lacks the creativity needed for the generation of knowledge that we need here in the Valley. And I think Paul pointed out too, we definitely desperately need some creativity in this place in order to better this place. So, this is the situation that is the most urgent. The transmutation or the transformation of the community college into a business and how it impacts learning. In a place known for its brain drain, the leaving of educated people, the situation is especially concerning as the district is playing an active role in cheapening knowledge by squeezing hundreds of adjuncts and pushing them out. It's something that should not happen in a place that is supposed to be about learning and education. There is one positive, however, from this situation, and that is that it brought us together right now, and it brought people that are concerned for this situation together. For ultimately, it is something that impacts all of us. It impacts us in a special way as adjuncts, but the situation that we're facing is something that leaks into every community in Fresno and in a way replicates and reproduces that which already exists in Fresno. So it seems to be that we're just creating more of the same. And again, I love the students, so I'm not talking about them. So ultimately, like I said, I think that it's on us to figure out how we could change this situation, and not just for this community college, but how we could restructure, remake, and reimagine learning so that it's not just a product of a business model as we have these days. That is all. Thank you.
Hello, my name is Dr. Bernadette Mordikian. I have quite a bit to say, and I've spent quite a bit of time writing this down because I really wanted to not just share my experience, but really take in a lot of the information that we have gathered since the last couple of months. This part-time advisory committee was formed about, what was it, a couple months ago? Literally a couple of months ago. Rigo, myself, Miriam Jamali are all members of our union, elected officials. I've been teaching here at this campus for over 8 years, and I've been with the union, being a part-time representative for the last 6. Besides my union work, I've also worked as an organizer, so that means I've gone out to almost every campus and talked to a lot of our instructors over the past couple of years, and I actually really enjoy that, hearing from other instructors. I really hope you guys were able to look at the posters that were outside. If you didn't, please go back and look at them. The reason why is we created a survey specifically for adjuncts here at State Center. We really wanted to get a comprehensive outlook as to who they are. So we have everything from gender to do they have health care to we're giving out gift certificates to find out where do you want to eat, and majority of the people want Doghouse, and I can agree with that. But I'd like you to go and look at those percentages because it really does highlight the working conditions specifically at State Center. And if you're a little confused, State Center is comprised of Fresno, Madera, Clovis, Reedley, Oakhurst.
There's some other small centers, but that's it.
Okay. Rigo and I and Miriam created the audio that was playing before you came in here. And that came through our survey with people wanted to anonymously talk about their experiences. One person, we didn't get around to recording them, but it's interesting. The 3 of us were going through all the data and we said, hey, did you write this? We could really see ourselves in what people were saying. What took my breath away was when I was reading from somebody who had been teaching as an adjunct here for many decades, had applied for a full-time position, never had it, has student loans, and said, I know that I'm going to die with these student loans. And I thought, if that's not a foreboding experience for myself, I don't know what is. So I'm here tonight to talk about something kind of sad, and we don't want to really discuss money. It's kind of a taboo topic, but I'm here to talk about my student loans and the payment and how that's affected me in general. So almost every instructor that I've met who was struggling or not, they all say that teaching and working with the students was the most rewarding aspect of their job. I wanted to be a psychologist and teach on this campus since 1998 when I was a student here, By the way, Paul, it was $13 a unit, just to let you know. I am proud to have achieved my educational and career goals. I'm doing exactly what I want in life, educating my community and helping future psychologists. Tonight, I'm here to be a voice for my colleagues who are afraid to come forward. Something that has surprised and shocked me is the amount of fear and anger that our adjuncts experience. There is a reason why there's only 2 adjuncts on this panel. We had trouble finding people who would speak in public about their experience at State Center. I was astonished to learn how people were being treated year after year. I knew I had to help my colleagues, which would also help our students. I knew going into teaching that it would be a lot of work outside of lecture, which I'm a workaholic, so I was like, sign me up, I can do this. What I didn't know is that I wouldn't be paid for any of my time outside of the classroom. Hours of reading the textbook, curating material to make lectures interesting, creating assignments and study guides to benefit student success, many hours of grading and helping students before and after class, through emails, writing letters of recommendation for students. And at first, you don't realize the impact of not getting paid for 2/3 of your work. Not until I stopped to realize 15 hours of work of not being paid a week is 60 hours a paycheck, which is, for me, $4,000 a month I don't get on my paycheck, which is life-changing. I am missing that money, which should be mine, and that is the money that I earned. If I were a full-timer, it would be mine plus benefits. How many of you in the audience have a job that pays you by the hour? To understand what it's like to be an adjunct, picture getting paid for working all day Monday, 2 hours on Tuesday, and for the rest of the week, including Saturday and most Sundays, you are not paid for your work. Your employer offers you paid training, some of which is state mandated, but you won't be paid for months after you email human resources asking, where's my payment? Last year, it took over 9 months for us to be paid for mandated trainings. We do this in lecture actually all the time. Okay. There have been many times when I have lost over $1,000 on my paycheck due to a clerical error, and I was told that I had to wait until next month to receive my payment. A $1,000 error on my paycheck means I have to hold my breath even longer for the next 4 weeks. How would you feel being treated like this after 5 years, 10 years, 20 years? Wouldn't you be enraged and want to leave your job? That is exactly what we're starting to see right here in this district. Instructors are leaving because they cannot work and live like this anymore. I come from a working class family that blessed me financially to have enough money for me to earn my bachelor's without any debt. I didn't complete my degree in 4 years. I studied abroad. I changed majors. I earned a minor and 2 certificates. I failed several classes right here on this campus because it was $13 a unit. And took classes that had nothing to do with my major except that I thought it sounded cool. I acquired my student loans in the 5 years it took me to complete my master's and doctorate in clinical psychology. Tuition at the time was about $1,000 a unit. I had to complete clinical hours, practicums, and an internship that were all unpaid. My loans paid for the gas and wear and tear on my car to UC and Merced back for about 2 years. And 8 years of teaching at Fresno City College, I have no benefits or job security. People ask me, why do you stay in education? I've had job offers outside of teaching, and I always come back to the thought that this is exactly where I want to be. It's exactly where I wanted to be since I was 18. Was right here on this campus helping students who were just like me. When I graduated with my doctorate, my debt was an astounding $115,000. I knew that a perk to teaching here would be that in 10 years of full-time work, my debt would be forgiven. What I didn't realize was how difficult it can be getting a full-time job, or most importantly, that I would only be paid for 1/3 of the work I complete. That for every class you are given, you will spend months creating and won't be paid. Since I'm not paid for all the work I complete or those hours are not honored, I'm able to pay less on my loans each month. The interest on my loans has increased and capitalized my principal, and now I have tacked on an additional $90,000 to my debt. I've never been late on my payments. I try and pay more than what is asked, and I've only been able to pay off 2 out of 21 loans in the past 11 years. I earned a degree that only 1% of the population holds. I came to Fresno City College to thrive. I'm not thriving, I'm barely surviving. I don't want to leave my career here, but I also can't continue to work for free, which I've started telling my full-time faculty colleagues who expect me to keep on doing a lot of the full-time faculty work that I've been doing for the past 8 years. I can't do it anymore, especially after the pandemic. Had the district paid me for the work I completed over the past 8 years, I would be considered full-time and could have been on the road to loan forgiveness. And my loans would have almost been paid off by now. I would have had 2 more years and my loans would have been gone. Having this high ratio of student loan debt compared to how much I earn has made it impossible for me to get a home loan. I look too risky on paper. I've been asked, can't you work more hours? It says here on your paycheck that you only work 10 hours a week, which is a lie. Anyone that knows me is aware I'm always working. After years of having to live with various roommates to save money, I've moved out on my own after my elderly housemate died from cancer 2 years ago. The apartment I rent was the cheapest I could find, and they wouldn't charge me a pet deposit or monthly pet fees. My rent is $950 a month. It doesn't have air conditioning. It has poor insulation, so you can imagine what it's like in the summer or when we have a really bad air quality. I can barely breathe in my own living space. Most months, my rent is half my paycheck. In December and January, my rent is my entire paycheck. My landlord was cautious about renting to me because of how little I make, especially in certain months like December, where we only teach for 2 weeks. My landlords contacted my references and specifically asked if I was good with money and could I afford to make the monthly payments. It hurts me to know that people think I don't know how to handle money or think that I'm barely working. When I applied to rent, the landlord was confused with my December and January pay stub because although the hours worked were similar, the pay was different by hundreds of dollars. I had to normalize that I complete office hours all semester long, but don't get paid for that work each month, and I have to wait 6 months to be paid. Do you know how frustrating it is to normalize and make sense to someone of how little I am paid, that I am paid months late and working more hours than what is documented? I probably sound crazy to them. One of several reasons that I earned a doctorate was I knew that if I invested in myself through education, that I could be a self-reliant and independent woman of color. I don't find that to be the case working here at State Center. My car is old enough to attend classes here. If my car breaks, I can't afford to buy one and have my student loans with my current pay. I am single with no partner or spouse to help ease my financial burden. But remember, I never assumed to be taken care of by someone else. That's why I earned a degree, and I thought that working as a state employee that I could provide for myself. I'm at a place in my life where I can't provide for my parents, and at times have had to ask them for financial assistance, which I absolutely hate doing because I don't want to ask them for that. If I were paid each month equitably, my financial life would be completely different. I wouldn't be so stressed every day. I could live my life with room to breathe and actually enjoy my life. I could pay off $20,000 each semester on my loans. I hate being in debt. Every day I think, how am I going to get through this month? How can I get ahead with what little I have? Teaching is not stressful, but how we are treated here at State Center is. When I think of my loans and the impact it has on my life, I feel like I'm constantly being punished for earning a doctorate and choosing to work in higher education. Did I make a mistake? Should I have gone to work in the prisons like my colleagues from graduate school who are thriving? I've met so many other adjuncts who struggled due to lack of compensation and benefits. One adjunct that I met taught 5 summer school classes so they could pay for their child's medical bills. Another member was not aware that as adjuncts we can apply for unemployment once the semester is over, and they had been using the money from their parents' inheritance just to make it from 1 month to the next. I'm sure that's not what their parents intended them to spend that money on. The only way that I can make ends meet is I live frugally. I teach numerous summer school courses, and if it weren't for unemployment, I would probably be homeless. Basically, I don't have much of a life outside of working nonstop. There is no money for vacations, new clothes, or self-care. Money must be saved several months in advance for trips to the doctor, for treatments and exams. The same goes for my cat, too. How are we, educated professionals serving our community, denied our wages, and why? How is this justified to treat your full-time faculty so differently than our part-timers? How can our full-timers be ranked 33rd out of 67 in statewide pay, while our adjuncts are ranked 66 out of 67? This disparity in pay ranking alone is unequitable. Last year, adjuncts received a lot of emails from the district saying, "Thank you for your service and your dedication. You pulled through to help out your students." And that's what we got, a lot of thank yous. Thank yous do not pay our bills. 60% of the faculty would like to be paid for the work they had to complete during a global pandemic. What is humanitarian is if this district would pay the adjuncts for the 2020 online migration. How did the district get through the pandemic? It was done on the backs of unpaid labor right here, which is absolutely shameful. Shame on you. It's a nice gesture of the district by creating a stress reduction series, but it's a downstream intervention. It only treats the symptoms and not the source of the problem. What would really reduce our stress is to be paid equitably, to have healthcare and job security, and at least let us have access to the EAP for psych services. A lot of us are burned out from the pandemic, mentally and financially. We can't afford a therapist, let alone pay our bills. Adjuncts are talking to the union because we are reaching out to help and listen. We know the origin of their stress. It's inequitable working environment. Please, let's help our adjuncts. What is this district waiting for? I'm not asking for a handout. I'm asking to be paid for the work that I complete. That's equity. I've never had a job where I was expected to work without pay. Employers know that that's a lawsuit waiting to happen and would never allow it. Paying the 1,000 adjuncts in this district would have a positive ripple effect for their families and our community as a whole. This district has the money to pay the adjuncts and would have money left over if they paid everyone their base rate pay. Why are we treating employees like this? I would like to know what other institutions receive state and local funding and only pay their employees for 1/3 of their work. Why is this exploitation normalized in academia? This district was granted CARES money in 2020, about $18.3 million just for employees. Where is that money for the adjuncts who worked on average an additional 60 hours per class taught and did not get paid? We're still waiting 19 months later for a payment. We've begged and asked the district, and they're not interested in paying us, which enrages me. Adjuncts struggled so much during the pandemic that this union created a fundraiser, and we raised over $25,000 and helped many of our members pay their bills, put food on the table, and diverted the need to go into debt just to survive.
Remember that for most of our adjuncts, State Center is their only source of income. Our employees who are professionals should not be struggling to the point of food insecurity and homelessness, but we are. Why am I here tonight? I like to help people and be part of the solution, an agent of change. Leaving a situation does not solve the problem. And we have a major problem here. Using the Fresno City College core values, growth, leadership, and success, if the value for growth is the promotion of equity and professional development, then paying your employees is not only fair, it's equitable. I'm a leader, and I want my colleagues, myself, and this district to be successful. Historically, to date, this has been a national problem of treating adjuncts unfairly. We can no longer go on treating educators like this because that's the way it's been done in the past. Change is happening, and it can happen here too. When I read that in Oakland, Peralta became the first district to grant their adjuncts full equity pay, I cried in disbelief. I literally did. The fantasy became a reality. I've always been someone that believes think globally, act locally. Well, if Oakland can do it, why can't we here at State Center also do it? We can be second in the state. We could be first in the valley. Because of this union, I have a contract. I have knowledge of my rights as a worker. I am grateful to SCFT as they've made it possible for me to be paid for the work that I completed when administrators tried to deny me payment over the years. In particular, Mark Trezza for helping me with, I don't know how many times he came in and I asked to be paid and I was never paid, and he walked in and said, okay, the check will be there in your next paycheck. I don't know what magic he has, but he did it. So thank you, Mark, for that. I'm here to support other adjuncts who do not know their rights, continue to be exploited, and are fearful of speaking up. I ask that all of you support this union by getting adjuncts at State Center to be paid for the work that they are already doing. We are one of the lowest paid adjuncts in the entire state of California, and having employees complete work that is unpaid out of fear of losing their job is egregious. You'll see that stat. It's about 60% of our adjuncts will work for free because they're afraid of losing their job. They'll take any work that is given to them, even though they don't have the time or energy to do so. In closing, I ask that this district, administration, and full-time faculty are no longer complicit in allowing unpaid work to continue and immediately create equity for all adjuncts. Most importantly, I want to say this to our adjuncts. While we wait for equity from this district, stop working out of fear and accepting unpaid work. You deserve to be paid and not exploited. We are the bulk of this faculty, and we need to have the courage to stand up for our rights. Thank you.
And just a sidebar of just so much of what you were talking about, Bernadette, just reminded me of my part-time days. And I've known Bernadette for years. And before I got a full-time job, I was driving around a 93 busted up Blazer that didn't have one of the windows working. I had plenty of times that I didn't have benefits. I do now. I get regular checkups. I purchased a new car. So there is a huge difference in what a full-timer makes versus what our adjuncts make. And it's life-changing, as Paul said. So there's, on my behalf, love and support you. But there's a rift that can be created between full-time and part-time faculty because we just have such different experiences. Even though we're on the same campus and we're doing the same thing, we have the same passions and we're doing the same work. So thank you. And so we have time for a Q&A. If anybody has questions for our panelists, go ahead and step up to a mic so we can hear you.
Not all at once.
I think she's all.
Okay.
A little bit closer. It's okay. I don't think it's on. We said we were ready for Q&A.
We're live streaming this, so the mics have to be live in order for the audio to go with it. So hopefully,
There we go.
there we go. Paul's going to be Donahue for those of you that are old enough to remember who that is.
Okay, is that better?
Yes.
Okay, so I'm representing Reedley College, but more importantly, counselors. So do we have any counselors?
Oh.
So in case you all don't know, counselors are actually paid, we're at my rate, $10 less than instructors are an hour. $10 less. I didn't even realize I've been counseling and out at Reedley for 15 years. And until this summer when we hired a new adjunct in our office who also works at West Hills, which by the way, they make a lot more than we do an hour, West Hills does. So I said, wait a minute, let me research this. Let me see what's going on here. I'm shocked. I am absolutely shocked that I make $10 less an hour than the rest of you sitting in here that are teaching. And I don't understand why I have a huge caseload of students. I work for a specific program, so I'm required to do a lot of extra things. And as all of you during the pandemic, I had my laptop at home and I am on my laptop constantly, even on the days I'm not scheduled to work because my students need me. And I love, love, love my job. I love my career. I love my students. I live in Sanger, so I have a lot of students who I know, so they have my cell phone number, and I'm texting them, and I love that part of it. But I do think that counselors are really underrepresented when it comes to adjunct. I love that you formed this committee, and I'm just hoping to see more, equity when it comes to even the adjunct pay in our district. But I would love health insurance more than anything. So I know there are other colleges that offer it, but I'm standing right next to you, right beside you, and I have a couple other out in the office too that are in the same way. But I don't know. Anyways, that's all I wanted to say was let's talk about that too.
If I might, the entire problem is equity. We have a lot of employees on this campus that do a lot of different jobs. But because of the full-time, part-time dichotomy, the people that are part-time are maybe working 3/4 or 2/3 or 3/5 essentially of what the full-timers are, but they're making 1/3 to 1/2 of what the full-timers are. And then as she said, counselors are even making less. And so people that are required to have advanced degrees, people who are doing exactly the same job are getting paid two different ways. I mean, I have colleagues that are full-timers that have PhDs, colleagues that are full-timers that have master's degrees. That's the minimum requirement for this job is a master's degree. The difference in pay between what a full-timer makes and a part-timer makes is at least 100%. And that doesn't count the benefits. There's no retirement. The retirement for adjuncts is Social Security.
If it's still around.
I'm sorry, what?
I said if it's still around.
Yeah, if it's still around, that's exactly right. You know, the adjuncts have to live long enough to be able to get Medicare. I mean, that's really their health plan. The fact that we have faculty on this campus who literally live in their cars. I have known adjuncts that have taught at the CSUs. I have a friend up at Stanislaus who for a year taught out of her car. Literally it wasn't because she was a freeway flyer. It was she had to live in her car because she just couldn't make it with what she was making for the classes. But if she had been making the same percentage, you know, if I was an adjunct teaching 3 classes, I made 3/5 of what a full-timer made that was teaching 5 classes, and I got the benefits, I'd have a pretty decent setup. I could live a normal life, and it would be fair. What the adjuncts are asking for, as the bulk of the faculty here, is equity. And the district has said, well, that might take 20 years.
Well, and I just want to say, if you go on the district's website, under HR, it says we're an equitable working environment. You can't say that you're equitable when you have this huge difference in pay disparity between full-timers and part-timers, and you simply do not pay people for the work that they do. That's not equity. And I just want to say this, we all have talked about and had these conversations. One is most of our students who are working make more money than we do, which is, it's a really hard sell when I'm having office hours and I have students who their dream was just like mine, to come back and like, hey, I really like what you're doing and that seems really cool. And to let them know this is what's happening now, but hopefully we can have changes. Maybe by the time you get a degree, things will be different. This is not a job where you can just walk in off the street. You have to have years of education. One colleague that I brought in from graduate school, he'd been waiting 3 years to get a job here. And once he finally got here, I was kind of mentoring him for free, which a full-timer should have been doing that, but I did that. And he was kind of astonished. He's like, well, I don't have time to do these study guides, or how many assignments do I have to teach? That means more grading. I'll just give them a midterm and a final. It's like, no, you can't give them 2 assignments, and these are the 2, grades that you're gonna have for the entire semester. And all of a sudden it hit him that, man, I could be making so much more in private practice. This is a lot of work for me to do. So Rhea and I had a conversation, and when I'm talking about recruiting people, we are professionals within our field. We know other colleagues that are interested in teaching. It is a really hard sell to bring somebody in as an adjunct and say, you're gonna make probably the worst amount of money, you have no benefits, and all this time that's expected that you need to do for student success is not paid for. We at this district are losing highly intelligent people just because of this treatment.
I mentioned this on the show yesterday, but I was driving down Blackstone on Monday, and there was a sign outside of Red Carpet Car Wash that said, now hiring part-time, full-time, $15 an hour to start. And I thought, you know what, for the hours I work, I would make more working at Red Carpet Car Wash than I do working here, yeah.
I'm a full-time faculty, and most people call me bold and fearless. I haven't always been that way, but I realized if I hadn't stood up for things, each time there was a nail in my coffin, and finally that nail would just collapse and I would be in there had I not stood up. And I stand up for part-timers all the time. I donate, I do whatever I need to do. I come to these things when I wanted to watch the football game, but I come. So I want to say like when I hear these stories, I want to cry, because I think we have a few bit of management, but we get bullied a lot, I think. And I think pushing back is a good thing. I don't know if any of you saw the bunch of managers stand up at the board meeting not too long ago, that some other managers was getting paid more than they were, and she was brand new. And I thought, what hypocrites, like you're getting over $100,000 a year, and now you're complaining in front of the board, and they've never gone to the board and complained on behalf of part-timers, never. And I want them to do that. When they do that, then my respect and what they've done will be restored. And maybe I'm just plain old stupid, and I would not imagine that anybody would think that, because I'm not. But I've come to a place at this campus where I have to run with bold and fearless, and I am neither one, but I don't want my coffin to be built here at Fresno City College for me, because that's what happens when you sit in silence. You are complicit in the way they treat you. And I understand people need their jobs. It's very scary. But it's also more scary for me that I'm punched in the gut when I can stand up for myself. Something terribly happened not too long ago with me, and the union had to stick up for me, and boy, I stood up for 2 weeks, 3 weeks, 4 weeks, 5 weeks, and finally I had it, and I said, Keith, I can't take it anymore. And the union stood up, and I got exactly what I wanted, so I just want to tell you, keep with the union. Thank you, Mark. He's pulled me out of so many rut holes. Thank you, Keith, Paul. I call them my, what do I call you guys? You know what it is. I'll probably get in trouble if I say this, so I won't say it. Thank you, Jerry.
How about meet me halfway, yeah?
any students here, by the way?
So, yeah, we have a student.
All right. Thank you for coming if you got extra credit or not. It's really nice that you're here.
Hello, everyone.
Hi.
My name is Gino Soto. I just wanted to come up here and talk about some of the things that they've been talking about. Because as I'm sitting in my chair, I'm literally shaking hearing some of these stories because me, myself, I'm a delivery driver for Amazon, and I'm making 30 to 35,000. There's no reason why these people should be getting all these degrees, and it's comparable.
You make more than we do.
Yeah, it doesn't make a whole lot of sense, and I'm wondering why that's even close to being a thing. And I'm actually a student of Gilmore and Tretza. So I just wanted to say that if there's a question, is there anything that us as students we could be doing aside from?
Yeah, actually, if the students could understand and sign, we've got an equity petition, or we have a petition outside to help us with the, hopefully telling the district to pay us for the online migration. But to stand with us in solidarity, to let this district know that, hey, 60% of our instructors are barely surviving here. We need to advocate for them. We advocate for you. That's why we're here. That's why we're basically homeless. We come here for you guys because we want to help you. So that would be wonderful if we could get the student body to tell the district, pay these people, please. We don't want to lose them.
And it's difficult for the students because we don't wear signs that say I'm part-time, I'm full-time, I'm this, I'm that, I'm starving, we just show up. We do the performing monkey, we do our thing, and we leave. And you don't know the situation that we're in, and that maybe we're tenure track and we are making the 6 digits, or we're making less than an Amazon driver. And you shouldn't have to worry about that. I think it's good that the students understand the situation, because if you remember at the beginning when Gilmore was talking, he first put up Kerr from the UC, and then of course Mario Savio. But part of the situation that was going on in Berkeley in the 60s was that it dawned on the students and the faculty that this is even here, it's a democratic institution. We have the Senate. The Senate is who makes a lot of the rules of what goes on. They don't do the contract or anything like that, but they impact a lot of what we do. And the Senate is a place where students can go and say, you know what, I just realized that most of my professors are starving to death.
Mm-hmm.
Is there something we can do?
Yes.
That's a place to start.
I also,
Go ahead.
well, I wanted to say part of it too is just spreading the word. The school is organized in a way, and many of them are, to conceal what's happening. And it's the same thing that happens with consumers and customers, right? Where they don't want you to know where your stuff is made because of the conditions. So in the same way, that first step is always spreading the word and learning and understanding these conditions that exist that in many ways have been hidden or are being concealed right in front of us. So yeah, I think that's part of it too.
For sure. Thank you, guys.
Thank you.
A little personal goal of mine is that I want to become a politician locally, and that's why I pointed out with civil rights instructors, political instructors. I got you guys. When I make it there, I got you guys. I'm giving back.
Thank you.
Good evening, everyone. My name's Carl DeClotz. I'm a business instructor in the business division. I've been teaching in the business division for about 22 years. And first of all, I want to say thank you to all of you. It takes a lot of courage. I think a lot of us experience that. We're afraid to voice our opinions because it's our employment here, and we're going to be looked at for that or scrutinized. So I really appreciate all your stories, and the stories shared before the whole presentation started. Just like, and excuse me, that last speaker, was he a student here?
Yes.
Okay. He asked as a student what he can do. What can we do as adjunct, because, there's something that floats around on social media. I'm sure a lot of you have seen it. The cost of this house was $120,000, 20 years ago, that house today, or 10 years ago, that house today is 350,000. My pay from 22 years has not gone up but $10, $15 an hour, you know? And how can we get it, you know, we're told to be fair and equitable in our class and see everything is diversity and fair, and how can we help as adjuncts for this movement? Because we should be like Oakland.
Yeah.
We should, be, you know, as an adjunct over this 20 years, you make teaching multiple classes, 15 to 25 grand. If you're teaching 3 classes a semester and you're doing summer school, you make about 25 grand. Whoever's making 30, I want to know how you're doing it. So
Yeah, I don't know how they got 30.
but I feel that we're making, you know, you say a third of the pay, but then benefits, retirement, and medical. You know, if you got a spouse or partner, that's about $15,000 a year in medical insurance. Probably if you got 2 children, about $25,000 a year. So it's not fair. Going forward, it's a great presentation. What happens next? How can we support this movement?
Well, one thing that I can definitely say is if you're not part of this union, if you don't pay dues each month, please sign up. I know that unfortunately from our survey, we found out that some adjuncts literally cannot afford the $16 each month to be part of this union because they need that $16 to survive. And the reason why it's important to be a dues paying member is we have our negotiation for a contract coming up next semester. And we can really hopefully negotiate with the district to say, you know, let's actually, if you're going to call yourself equitable, that you're a place of equity, show it. And if you can, stand with us. And if you can't, sign our petitions. About every couple of weeks, we're trying to put out the adjunct news bites. That's put on by the 3 or 4 of us each week at the headquarters. And we're pumping out information and we're trying to contact, especially in this, after the pandemic, it's really hard to connect with people. So, you know, if anything, make contact that way and we can get more information because we need more people to stand with us.
Keith, we have a general membership meeting coming up next week. And when you get the mic next, could you give the details for that, please? Okay, November 10th, there will be a general membership meeting. If you are a member of the union, please show up. We'll be discussing that. If you're not a member, that'd be a good time to come and find out what we do and who we are. All of us that have been on the stage tonight are members of the executive council. And so you can ask us what's going on. You know, there are things that are happening that we can do, whether you're full-time, part-time, a student. You know, we need every voice we can get.
I would also say that we need to organize ourselves. We're one of the biggest employee groups in the district, but we're so isolated and separated that we often don't even know what's happening with other adjuncts in our own departments. So one of the first steps is just to be able to know enough people and organize ourselves so that when we go into negotiations, we have something to bargain with, which is our labor.
I want to add one thing to what Rigo just said. Not only do we not necessarily be able to collaborate with the members of our department, most of the time I don't even know the other members of my department. I never see them. I mean, I see the full-timers, but I think we have something like 13 part-timers in history. I probably know half of them, if that. And I may know the names, but as far as actually knowing them, because I'm usually running off to another campus, as are they, because that's how our world is. And so are we part of this institution? If we are, then treat us like we are. If we're not, then maybe we shouldn't be.
We also have our monthly exec meetings, and everybody is allowed to come in and listen. Obviously, we have closed session at certain times, but just because we're on the exec council and we're talking about some of the beefier items, you are more than welcome to join. We are a rowdy group. They can go a little bit long because of Keith, so we're looking at 3 hours. But you know, there's always somebody in the office. What I found being a member of this union is these are my union siblings. This is a family that I can come to. And I really do mean that. I'm grateful to every one of them. Sean.
Hi, good evening. Sean Boyd, Geography, MSc. I was an adjunct for 12 years before I got hired in the fall of 2018 full-time. Yeah, I never thought that was going to happen. Damn. So the feelings are just so heartfelt and palpable. And there are a couple of things regarding what Michael just said. Dr. Eisinger, what Dr. Eisinger just said.
Michael's fine.
Okay, all right.
Just don't call me Mike or Mickey or anything.
Understood.
I don't answer to that.
Okay. Obviously, the pay equity is huge, but participation, to be allowed to participate in governance, which is kind of what you teased out of me in my thoughts just now when you were just saying, I don't even know half the people. And yeah, I mean, there's adjuncts are not allowed in any significant way to participate in the governance of this place, even though they're the work is on their backs. That's a fact.
Well, it's a catch-22.
Right.
We would like to, most of us would like to be involved with some
But
governance in it, but if we do it for free.
Yes, that's right.
And so there's a catch-22. How do we participate in the institution, even doing more free stuff?
Right,
and
right.
It's difficult to participate when you're flying all around the Central Valley.
When you got to get from Merced to...
Which is not only bad for our environment, but you think about the physical toll, the stress that you are bringing in to your classroom when you are flying down the 99.
Yep.
Why are we doing that to ourselves and our environment?
I wanted to tease one more thing out of you, Bernadette, if I could, because this is something that came up in one of our meetings, and it wasn't in closed session. Okay. Regarding the equity issue, and Carl and I were in the first equity cohort, and I think Monique was too, back in the fall of 19. And it's all about equity, 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 and that's grand. All right, that's grand. It should be addressed. There's no question. But the person who is primarily the head of said equity effort on this campus is in the same department that you're in. And when there was something having to do with SLOs and a task had to be done, what was that person's response to you when you brought up that it would be essentially working for free?
Well, and to make a long story short, what was asked of me is something a report that's done every about 4 or 5 years at full-time faculty complete, and I'm the only person that teaches abnormal psychology, so it's like, oh, we've got to do this huge report. I did it last year. I'm so angered that I did that, and the administrator actually paid me not my lab rate, but $30 an hour, which I didn't know any better. And once I completed the work, the administrator said, you should have done this in less time, so I'm not going to give you all these hours. This was also done after the semester was over with, so it was like my time. But speaking to Sean's point, this person who's in charge of equity on this campus, when it came up in our meeting, the person told me, well, you'll just have to do it. And I, feeling like a victim there a little bit, I said, okay, we'll find out how many hours I'm going to get and what's my pay rate. I want to be paid my lecture rate if I'm going to do this again. I've already been, shammed before. I'm not going to do this again. And then it hit me that I don't have to do this. I went back and I actually talked to Keith and I talked to John Fitzer, who's in charge of negotiations. I said, hey, as adjuncts, we have 3 things that we're in charge of. One is teaching, which we only get paid for. The other is grading and keeping accurate records, i.e. attendance. Those are the 3 things that we have to do. That's it. And so I went back and I told my chair and this person, I said, I'm not doing this. It's exploitation. You don't have to tell me that I have to do this work. I'm sorry, but you'll have to figure it out yourself. I also emailed.
There you go.
And by the way, that's actually the first time I've ever stood up for myself here on this campus, and I told all of my union siblings, I stood up for myself and I said, no, I'm not going to do this. I then emailed everyone that was an adjunct in the psychology department who was not there, and I said, hey, what you witnessed me saying, oh, okay, I'll just figure it out. I said, these are your rights. I emailed them back and I said, do not work for free. You witnessed me doing this, but I have already contacted the other people because I also, especially as a union rep, did not want them to think that that was okay to be treated that way. So I guess, I have grown a little bit more coming back to this campus as a leader. Thank you, Sean.
And I just want to make a point, as a full-time faculty member and a recent department chair, program review is work. It's a lot of work in data collection and compiling, and at least in our department, we had full-time faculty that we could send around to do that. We did not need part-time faculty to fill out those reports.
Another psychologist.
Hi.
Hello.
Never entirely sure how close I'm supposed to hold these things. Yes, I am another adjunct psychology professor here at Fresno City. I actually just started back in fall of 2019, so I'm probably the baby here.
Welcome.
It's been a rude awakening realizing just how poor the treatment is for adjuncts. It was, I felt like it was a bit of a secret because I had no idea that any of this was going on when I was first studying to become a professor, because I know I've wanted to work here specifically at Fresno City since I was a student here starting in 2013. But no one told me that this would be my situation, and I'm very fortunate that I have good friends, lifelong friends, who have been willing to help me financially for the time being while I live on poverty wages. They're going to be my best friends forever. I've been trying to think about what I could possibly do to help out with this, with this problem with equity, unfortunately, for the adjuncts. And I think when classes start up again in the spring, since we're all going to be back on campus again for the most part, or at least I know I am, I think I heard someone earlier said that, hey, maybe we should have like t-shirts or something saying, hey, we're adjuncts, we're starving. I think I'm actually going to do that as a reminder to each of the students in my classes every single day that, hey, this is going on. And I'll make sure to remind them at the beginning of my classes and at the end of my classes so they know the situation. I know it's kind of hard for us to protest since we're all so scattered in many ways, but maybe that's something to think about. I know I'm going to do it.
I'll get one of those t-shirts too. I'd love to
Yeah,
get rid of
same
that.
here.
Thank you, Charles.
Seth Yates, chemistry. I'm full-time. Before I was full-time, I actually went into it eyes wide open. I have an older brother who's English master's, who wanted to teach community college, did freeway flying in San Diego area before I was even in grad school. So when I sort of chose this path, I knew the potential outcome. And I did an amazing amount of free labor for a couple years, and I won the lottery. It was great. And I full-time, and I thought, I'm going to try to help the other adjuncts, behind me. And I have tried, but I realized today that what I did was wrong, or was not in maybe the most helpful path. So what I tried to do was try to help them understand the path toward becoming a full-timer. And in my field, that was, it's relatively effective. I'm chemistry. We have 10 full-timers here.
Wow.
In a much smaller department than history, and the district has been hiring chemists like crazy. And I have some close friends who are math, and they've been hiring math faculty like crazy. So I felt like effective, like what I was doing was very helpful, helping them see the path to cross over, and helped a number of people get hired here and in other districts around the state. My brother's English, and hearing your stories and remembering all of his pathway, which is many, many years, he's 7 years older than me, and he got a full-time job well, long after I was tenured, we'll put it that way. And it was life-changing. It was life-changing for me at the time. It's life-changing for him. It was like he was at the end of his rope. He was totally going up to a different career path and was able to switch over, and it sort of rescued his family life. It was amazing. But the size of pools that you guys are talking about, the size of pools he told me about, 200, 300 people better qualified, better resumes than him. There really isn't a path to full-time for all those people, is there, right?
Well,
So that leads me to my actual question. What should I be doing? I'm full-time. How can I help the adjuncts that still are in our department? How can I get more of my colleagues on board? Because in chemistry and biology and math, we see a very different world, and we're like very rarely aware of what the rest of the college is dealing with.
Well, I'll let somebody else answer your question, but I want to just kind of pad a little something in there, is that not everybody wants to become full-time. Some of us have full-time jobs as well, and so we're doing this because we want to, or, you know, we can teach teaching 3 classes is full-time work. So I don't know why we're not getting paid that, but I think to have that expectation taken away and just actually pay people just like you would at an hourly job. And I've worked a lot of jobs in my life. Like, you know, if you're here, that you get paid, and I think that would be a huge start. But how maybe some of our full-timers can have a say and answer that. Jerry wants to say something.
Hang on, let's get the mic because we want it to go over the stream over the internet so that everybody can hear what you're saying. The whole world is watching.
I know. So as a full-time faculty, for me, I'm constantly fighting for part-timers. I do a lot of mentoring behind the scenes. I do a lot of help with application and things that I know the expectation is, because sometimes our part-timers just do not know how to answer the questions. They might need help with that. I do so much mentoring behind the scenes. I sent out a letter yesterday saying, hey, I've helped so many of you, you don't even know that I did. You know, so we have to be the best advocate for the part-timers. We cannot take all the advantages away from the part-timer. If we are making a full-time salary and there's a class out there to be taught, give it to the part-timer. I just think I don't know if the rules have changed, but I know in the past the full-timer had the priority to get the additional courses. And I think we have to help the part-timers. We have to go out there. We have to talk to administrators. I am neither bold nor fearless. I just have to utilize and not make fear my platform. When I make fear my platform, I get nowhere. And so for me, I don't make fear my platform. I make doing what's best and right for the part-timers by helping them, by giving them my phone number, by saying if donate some money, I do that, you know, that kind of thing. Because as a full-timer, I honestly really make a really, really, really good salary, and it's really great, and you feel so much better. You're 50% less stressed than when you were part-timer, and then you take an additional 50% off because you have medical coverage. So then you're stress-free just to work with your students, and then you look happy, and you are happy, and happiness comes when you become full-time, believe me.
Well, and I think it's important. I wish, you know, maybe we could get Paul to actually give us the numbers here, but, you know, and I thank you, Jerry, and everybody else that I know who contributed to our fundraiser for our adjuncts last year, but it shouldn't have to come out of pocket from everybody else. This district has millions of dollars. Millions. They should be able to pay us. It comes also back to funding. Tens of millions. So, you know, the funding for hiring more full-time people, they just need to open up that money. But Paul, how much money does this?
There's a thing called it's the 311Q. It's a beautiful little document every quarter. It just came out yesterday on the Board of Trustees agenda. So you can look it up, it's public. Anyway, in 2018, 2019, they had a ending balance. What's called the ending balance is the reserve. It was $48 million. And
$48 million?
$48 million. And 3 years ago. And then last year, and then 2 years ago, it was, well, last year, $76 million, $71 million. And then last year, $80 million. So just in the last year, there was an increase of $9 million on that. And before that, 20-something million dollars, the increase in the reserve. Since I've been here, there have been on 3 occasions, as I recall, that the district actually spent down the reserve. Part of it, one time, was $6 million to add to the $60 million that went to this. Another time, there was another lump sum. But typically what happens is that reserve grows $6 million every year. A 50% raise for all adjuncts, the last I looked it up, would cost somewhere around a max of $7 million.
Yeah, we talked about this with Paul, and if the district
Per
would
year.
actually pay every adjunct their base salary rate and all the hours that we work, the extra 15 hours that full-timers get, because that's equity, right? That's what we're all striving for, that the district would still have $2,000 left over per person. So they have the money. And I really do thank you all for chipping in, but the pressure needs to go back on the district.
And I think one way we can put that pressure on, and I was thinking about this with the full-timers and the students and the part-timers that were making comments. Excuse me. Damn hay fever. It is unfair to our students that 60% of the faculty is so stressed that they might be homeless, or that they can't afford to get sick, or that they are having to get 2 hours from Merced College to NAS Lemoore. Even paying the reg fee, since it's illegal for us to charge tuition of, what is it, $48 a unit now? Even if you just take the $48 that the students are paying, they're still making a profit off of the classes that an adjunct take. I mean, if you add up 35 students by what they're paying, it's way more than the instructor's getting. So we're paying a lot of the building costs, and they still get their ADA for that.
I mean, I think our students were kind of surprised when they found out that we had to pay for parking passes. And you know that's stressful.
Well,
I mean,
and
actually,
a lot,
teaching online has been kind of nice because we don't have road rage to find parking to come to class. But when you're a frequent flyer and you're going to different campuses, you might have 4 or 5 different parking passes that you've all paid for just to go to work.
It also diminishes our ability to do our job, because when somebody working at Red Carpet Car Wash is making more than I am, and I'm trying to tell them that they need to do their homework, they go, why?
I wanted to mention something too. Full-timers, we need you to stand with us for negotiations.
Yeah.
And those are coming up, and those are really important. And that's something that we could really do.
So, you guys know me, everybody here knows me. But my question is that there's a big movement toward equity. It's a big word. It's on every campus, particularly now. So there are also a lot of social programs here on this campus for students. And not to, this is not a criticism of students or what they need on this campus or in life in general, but there is an emphasis on helping those students and coming to some understanding of their economic situation, their social situation. How do you guys feel about that, given your experiences here? How do you feel about that?
It's difficult because we're in the same boat. I mean, in our division, social science division, we have Hope for the Holidays, which goes out to a deserving student. And I'm thinking, can we have Hope for the Holidays for adjuncts? Lots of our adjuncts want to access our food pantry. It's really difficult to, I mean, of course, we're going to help our students, but to say that you can be an advocate when you're literally in the same position that they are in it's precarious.
The pandemic's, I think, been rough on adjuncts in a couple of ways. Number one, some people lost classes because enrollment has been down. People don't want to take online courses. In addition, and who gets cut first? It's the adjunct. The full-timers, they're going to get those classes that the adjuncts are going to lose. In addition, the majority of the adjuncts, many of us had already, if we weren't fully certified to teach online, we had already been utilizing things like Canvas and Blackboard because most of us had to teach multiple campuses, so we used the tools that we had, and we were much more proficient at online supplemental teaching or full-time teaching online, as opposed to many of our full-time colleagues who didn't have the need to switch to online until the pandemic hit. And I don't know about Bernadette and Rigo, but I know I fielded lots of calls from full-time faculty at this campus and other campuses on how to get their course material up because the training was only going so fast. And so again, we're working for free to help our colleagues who are making a lot more money than we are, but they didn't have the experience. We were forced to learn how to do this stuff because we needed it in order to make a living. So the pandemic has been, I think, extra rough. It's been rough on everybody, but it's been, I think, extra rough on many adjuncts because they've had additional piles put on top of them.
So let's take one more question and then we'll wrap up. We do have one more raffle to do, so hang out. Oh, actually two, right? Two. So it's worth your time in food as well as to hear from our colleague Cornelius.
I guess I'm going to be the last one, and
make it good.
Bernadette stole my thunder so many times because I too am from the psychology department, and apologies to Charles, I walked right by you. I was like, I think I know you, but and I wanted to say hi to Mr. Soto there too, because you're in my sexuality class, and you're exactly like I thought you would be from your comments in our discussion boards. I would love to have you in a face-to-face class because you would really shake things up, and I like that. I look forward to your comments when I do a discussion from you, so it's good. But sure, well, thanks, I appreciate it, and yeah, I mean, everything said then I concur with, and I know Bernadette and I have talked a lot and kind of like commiserated or whatever the right word might be, and I know everything that was said tonight is really true, and especially the part about not getting paid, and I know I personally, pardon me, I personally logged over 400 hours of migration effort during the spring transition, and I know that I tried to get paid for a fraction of it, and I was told that fraction I was going to get paid for was still asking too much. It was like 78 hours actually, so I had to cut that in half, and I know that Mark had helped me there too, and to get me, and Keith had helped too, to help me try to get paid for something. I think I got paid something like for like 30 some hours out of over 400 hours, and just couldn't believe it, especially because the document we filled out didn't say anything about there's a cap on how much you can ask for, and it was only for 6 weeks anyway, not the entirety of the semester, which I probably worked 16, 18-hour days every day just to try to keep up, because I had 3 different classes and about almost like 3 dozen chapters. I had to get lectures done, and then you got to do all that ADA stuff, caption things. I'm just going on and on, but there's just a lot. If you don't teach, you don't know, but there's a lot of stuff behind the scenes before you get in front of the classroom and deliver content, if you will, and it takes a lot of work to do that, and it's a lot of time. And it's, especially since this migration, it's just been really, like Bernadette said, enraging that we're not getting paid for any of that. It's the first time, I've been teaching since the mid-90s, and it's been the first time ever that I felt like, wow, I'm really working for nothing here, and I'm just really fed up with it. And I really liked what you said about fear, because I saw this statement yesterday, maybe it was just a little premonition, that fear is a dragon guarding your treasure, and it's really true. And as a gay man, I know that if you're silent, things are not going to come your way. You can't just expect the world to treat you right because you deserve it, no matter what your merit is. You have to ask. And I shouldn't have to ask. None of us should have to ask for this, because we know, and I've talked to Paul, told me one time a few years ago what the money was, and the money is there. And we're not asking something for nothing, but I am like really damn sure, and pardon my language, that this district has gotten a lot for nothing. And that's a fact. That's a fact. But I'm going to use stronger language, nothing swearing here, but I'm going to use the language immoral here, because this is immoral. Immoral, translation, you're doing something wrong. And when I started out as a psychologist, I worked for nonprofits, and I didn't expect to make a lot of money. I worked with people with AIDS back in the 80s when that was uncool to do and people were scared and you didn't get paid much for doing it. I worked for a nonprofit mental health center and went out in the field and helped people wanting to kill themselves or jump off bridges. I'm a really nerdy guy, so that's like my superpower. I can calm people down and not threaten them. I'm really good at saving people's lives. Literally, I didn't get paid much for doing that either, but I thought that was okay because, hey, it's a nonprofit. This district is not a nonprofit. I mean, there's money here. There's lots of money. And again, we're not asking something for nothing. And I'm really, really tired of being told that my time and my effort and my talent and my integrity, which was challenged last year when I asked to get paid, I was basically being told I was trying to steal money. I'm like, you've got to be effing kidding me. I mean, seriously, you've got to be kidding. I worked for this. I'm good at what I do. I deserve to be paid, and I earned it. I went through all the school that you did, all that stuff there too. I paid my dues. And I'm here because I want to be. I don't want to teach at a university. I don't want to teach people like me that went to university. I want to teach the underdog. I want to help people that are struggling. I work for nonprofits because I believe in doing those kinds of missions and helping people out. That's what I want to do. And I don't think it's too much to ask that I can at least make a living and not have to be stressed. I just had brain surgery last year and I got some other treatment I got to do. I cannot afford to do it. And I have things I need to have done to my body that I cannot afford to do because I can't afford the deductibles on the insurance that I've got right now. And thank God I've got something. But, I shouldn't have to be in that position. Not at my age, not what I dedicated. And again, I can't believe I put in all that effort back in the spring migration and was told I'm not going to get paid for any of it. It just is not totally acceptable at all. And I'm really glad we're doing. And if you're not in the union, you need to get in it because people will not do the right thing. I hate to say it, but it seems like it's an adversarial situation we have with this district between the faculty that teach there, and I don't like that. Like some people said earlier tonight, it shouldn't be like that. We should all get along. We're an education institution, but it seems like it's very adversarial, and I just don't like that. It doesn't need to be that way, especially because we're not asking something for nothing. If I was, I'm not asking for you were talking about parking. I'm not asking for a dedicated parking space here, but it's a joke. We got to pay for our own parking. And I was just telling some friends over the weekend that, how much do you make? I said, well, I don't even make $30,000 a year, barely. And I wanted to qualify years. Well, asterisk, please. That's before taxes. And so you get taxes out, so you make even less than that. Just shave off about $4 or $5 grand. That's what you make a year. And it's very embarrassing, to have a PhD and a master's and a bachelor's, and this is what I make. And again, I'm here because I want to be. And I like what I do, and I don't want to teach any place else. I've been teaching community colleges all my career of teaching, and I love doing it. Because you get a certain kind of student, you get a heterogeneity. I like doing that. I don't want to go anywhere else, but, like she said, or they said up there, I'm sorry, we're being squeezed out. And, I do other work on the side, too. I work for textbook publishers and edit because I'm super anal retentive, which comes in handy for that kind of work. It's great. But, I would love to make money just teaching. And so anyway, that's what I wanted to say, that we're all up here, we are not anomalies, we're not unicorns, this is systemic, this is nationwide, but it's also in this district, and I'm hoping we can do something about it, because again, we're not asking something for nothing. Anyway,
the historian in me wants to point out that we're at a moment, we're at several moments that the historian could talk about, but one of the moments that we're at right now is called Kellogg's, Harley Davidson, and John Deere, and right now there are more people, Kaiser Permanente, there are more people on strike right now across this country, either in unions or forming unions, because part of the pandemic is people have been reassessing their lives. And people are saying, you know what? I'm not going to work at your shit job anymore for your crap wages. I would rather be without a job than be exploited. And people are tired of it. And look, This is the union, right? We're the ones that can make this happen. But we have to be unified, and the adjuncts need the assistance of the full-timers. Because yes, the full-timers should be, our full-timers are compensated pretty well. And in the next round of negotiations, they're going to get something, and they are entitled to it. They should get it. But where the gains need to be put, if we're going to make this a better institution, isn't just to let the part-timer or let the full-timers make a little bit more money. We have to get this parity right. We have to get equity right, or it's going to fall. This is unsustainable in the long run. We have to get to the point where, as a part-timer, if I teach one class, I get 1/5 of a salary, and it should simply be that easy, right? If you were in any other job, that's essentially the way it is, and especially a job that requires the amount of training and experience that our jobs require. No other job requires a PhD to make less than minimum wage. Only by working with the union right now, and we're coming into negotiations, are we going to be able to change that. And it's the only way it's going to change is if we organize. So I don't know how that's going to look, but that's really what we're going to end up having to do is look around the country. We're not the only ones in this boat. There's a labor movement going on right now that is trying to change things.
Well, and then everybody here, if you are inspired at all, please go out and communicate. I've been saying this all over social media. Anybody that I talk to, and they're like, hey, what have you been up to? And I tell them, yeah, I teach over here, but I'm really active in my union. And every time you communicate with somebody and educate them about what is happening right here in this district, it makes a little bit difference. I was talking with an acquaintance who helps. His job is with Clovis Unified, and he helps an autistic child. During the pandemic, he makes $27.50 an hour. The district, Clovis Unified, gave him $2,700. And I said, that's fantastic, you deserve that. We still have not gotten anything. He was looking at me, he's like, what? And please, that's how that's gonna help or start this process, is all of us reaching out and talking about this.
Well, thank you to our panelists.
Thank you.
And thanks so much for everybody that showed up. We do have some exit surveys so we can get some feedback on how this evening went. So please be sure to fill those out on your way out. We still have 2 raffle prizes, so I'll read those off real quick. First ticket is ending in 8430. 8430. All right.
Hey.
All right, and our last ticket is the magic one, ending in 8405. 8405. Exactly, somebody who left. Got it.
You get to keep that one.
All right, how about 8415? Oh, you got the one I wanted too. All right.
That's gonna eat.
She's gonna eat well. That's a good one. Thanks again, and have a good evening.
Also, I wanted to invite anybody that would like to have an after conversation with any of us, or I think Paul might be there too. We're gonna have beer and pizza at the Union Hall, which is right down the street. So no students, but if you want a slice or a few slices of pizza and you're a student, I'm pretty sure you could come by and we could give you a few slices of pizza so you could get on your way. Yeah.
Yeah, if you don't, it's right down the street.
Right down the street. Ask us if you need directions.